Loud. All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all having a good time tonight. Thank you all for coming. My name is Todd Browse. I'm your host for the evening. I'm here with Susan Schultz and Ashley Wilson, and we would like to welcome everyone to HBAP Startups. So let's get started. Let me see if I can click the next slide here. All right. For those of you who are new to our startups group, we have a few announcements at the beginning of each meeting. We'll do some short networking breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together for our main event. And first off is our mission. We are here to help foster and fortify an innovation and entrepreneur community coming out of the Harvard Business Analytics program. Our goal is to provide our members with the tools, knowledge, leadership, and confidence necessary to create and grow their businesses from the ground up. Susan.
And there are, of course, a bunch of different ways to get and stay in touch with us. There's our website, there's the HBAP website, there's the YouTube link where the presentations that we've had are posted as long as the presenter has given us permission to do so. There's a newsletter, there's the Slack channel if you're in HBAP, and of course, bring somebody with you, invite other people that you think might be interested in this community. And then, unless the presenter says otherwise, everything gets posted publicly in our YouTube channel. And we've got, today we have our own Amanda, which is going to be super interesting. And it sounds like she wants it to be very interactive. So that'll be great for us. And then next week we have Ravi Swanee, who came to us like more than a year ago to talk about his psychoaesthetics and his design company and what he does with that. And what's cool about it is he's really talking about innovation and transformative design and how do you harness the power of a diverse population. So he's going to come and talk to us about his new book next week. And please feel free to buy his new book ahead of time and be ready to ask questions of him. And then the week after that, we have Christy Jenkins, who is here courtesy of Kelly, which is great. And she is this amazing person. She's a former professional athlete, top 10 in 3 different sports. She also co-founded a multi-club football company. She is a venture capital investor. She's a speaker, and she's going to come and speak to us about kind of the lessons learned and the mindset needed from being an elite sports performer, and how does that apply to people in business, people with startups, leadership and culture. So that ought to be really cool as well. And our code of conduct. So we all know this, right? We want to foster this cooperative, inclusive environment where people can come and listen to cool ideas, talk about cool ideas, bring their own ideas, and just a reminder that all rights are reserved by the presenter. And our credo about feedback is just kind of skip the negative stuff and go for the positive stuff. It works better for the presenter and gives them better feedback that they can actually absorb. And then, as always, if you have some ideas you want to present or you're concerned about something, just reach out to me, to Todd, to Ashley, and we will help you figure it out.
Okay, so let's do some breakout rooms. Bear with me because this is, I'm not set up 100% perfectly here, but let's just try this. See if this works. Hopefully everyone will get a breakout room. I'll see you in about 5 minutes. Recording. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had fun. So just a little reminder, please do fill out the Zoom survey when you exit tonight. We do love data. The recordings will be made public on our YouTube channel, and please do stick around for some overtime where we will continue to talk about artificial intelligence and entrepreneurship. All right, let me pull up my bio for Amanda because I completely got distracted by David Gersick, so I blame him. It is my honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Amanda Fetch, our very own. Amanda is a seasoned executive with over 2 decades of experience in analytics, data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Her leadership has driven digital transformation across academia, corporate sectors, advisory roles, and board positions. Active within the United States Geospatial Intelligence Foundation, she contributes to their space situational awareness and artificial intelligence and machine learning working groups. As a senior fellow for the Cybersecurity Forum Initiative and a board director for the TMMI Foundation America chapter, Amanda is committed to cybersecurity and software testing excellence. Amanda is currently pursuing a PhD in space situational awareness, say that 10 times fast, and orbital debris management. As part of her PhD studies, she is part of the Virtual Student Federal Service Program through US CENTCOM, integrating OpenAI and advanced technologies into intelligence processes, collaborating closely with intelligence analysts and the United States Department of Defense. To support senior defense decision makers. Now, without further ado, if we could all please briefly unmute ourselves and let's give our very own Amanda Fetch a warm round of applause.
Woohoo, Amanda!
Woo!
All right, let me stop sharing. Oh, Amanda, thank you for doing this. Thanks for coming.
Okay, can I share Todd here?
Yes, you should be able to share.
Let us share. Okay, can everybody see my deck?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, nice. Okay, I'm going to jump in. So I think pretty much most of you on the call have seen me or come across my path at one point in time, but for those who haven't, I'm Amanda Fetch and I was part of HBAP. I'm going to actually jump to a little slide, just a little bit about me, but as Todd said, I'll be speaking of dispelling common misconceptions around Gen AI. And so let's see, are we moving forward? Okay, here we are. So I did this slide with 10,000 things. So the point of this slide is I have people coming to me consistently through HBAP and beyond saying, what are you working on? How can I get involved? So when we distribute out the slides, you could say, okay, this is what Amanda's currently doing. Ah, that geospatial thing. Ah, that board of this. I want to hear more, Amanda. So ask me about that thing. So, but for those who don't know me, Todd already did my bio. I've basically been in analytics data science for a little over 20 years at this point. The main focus I have right now is really that PhD. I'm going to be done in January. So I'm cranking out working with the US GIF. So what Todd mentioned, the United States Geospatial Foundation is a member of their working groups because it's working directly alongside with my PhD. That and some of the stuff I'm doing with CENTCOM is research-based as well, which as Todd said, OpenAI for intelligence production and stuff like that. So I'm not going to delve too much into this. This again is more for if you want to hit me up after, you could say, oh, that thing, I want to hear more about that. But anyway, thanks startups for having me this evening. I don't want to exactly say I'm doing a quote speaking engagement because I wanted to make this more interactive based off of if any of you had seen, which I think most of you actually did see that. I did an Ask Me Anything session with D3 Labs through HBS. And so it was pretty much on this topic, dispelling different misconceptions of Gen AI. So I pulled out some of those topics for us to kind of interactively discuss together. And within some of that was some different references and things that I had spoke about, but nobody really could see what that was. So we're going to pull up some things tonight so you could actually see what I was talking about. And so again, I could hear others' thoughts and opinions on what this stuff is and, you know, what we're actually seeing out here in the field and in academia and so forth. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to start with the academia piece. So I feel like what we hear a lot is this misconception, simply it's unethical. Using Gen AI within academia, within higher ed, it's unethical across the board. It's cheating. If you're not seeing this within your academic circles, I suggest you go on social media and look at any advertisement, any kind of tool that's using ChatGPT or anything pretty much at all. And the comments like actually make me want to vomit, excuse me, because we're recording. Like it's terrible. People hate these tools. And I think most of them have never used them in their lives, but it's literally how horrible it is and how you don't have a brain. I mean, every negative thing you could possibly imagine is the comments being made on social media about this stuff. So what I did was I went in and actually pulled out some policies from different higher ed institutions to say, okay, these are people, customers, whatever. Maybe they know Gen AI, maybe they don't. But I actually dug into some policies to see what universities actually published out there and what they're saying about the stuff. So the first one I want to dig into was actually UPenn. So I hope some of you have seen these before, but if you haven't, perfectly fine. I could share. I don't know if I can. Let me see if I can get back in the chat because I wanted to share some of these links so you could see, but I'm going to pull it up on the screen anyway. So this one I'm going to pull up now. This is actually through UPenn. So this guy right here. So in a nutshell, basically this policy emphasized the importance of academic integrity, of course, through UPenn, right? And the use of Gen AI in coursework. So it highlighted the potential of it. It can enhance student writing, research, and organization skills, but throughout it, it was very cautionary against over-reliance on the tools. And basically what they did was they went in and faculty was encouraged to set clear guidelines on acceptance of the use of Gen AI. And so these things really range from prohibition, like you just shouldn't do it, to limited, to make sure it's transparent use, things like that. And so a couple of them I wanted to dig into. And my favorite one was literally right at the top. And so it literally says pretty much, let me find it. Here it is here. It's basically saying, yeah, you can use the tools. That's great. Good for you. But you're going to be cutting corners and you're going to waste a huge and expensive opportunity to think and communicate within your academic, pretty much your career here. So I would say that's probably more on the negative side of things, that this is bad. And so the next one was basically saying you could use it to help you generate ideas, brainstorm, but you should note that the material generated by this stuff, it could be inaccurate, it's complete, you know, the whole hallucinations, all that fun stuff, right? And again, beware, because it could stifle your own thinking and creativity. You know, that here we go again with that kind of, you know, sentiments going on here. Then moving forward a little bit more, it's saying you can use it in this class, right? ChatGPT, Dolly, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, you know, it kind of runs the gamut, right? You can use all this stuff. Totally unrestricted, do what you want. Any purpose, you're not going to get penalized, great, good for you kind of thing. But here we go. They make up, you know, LLMs make up incorrect facts, fake citations, and you will be held responsible for anything you put out there that's inaccurate, bias, effect. You know, here we go again when it's like this thing's going to spit out like crap, right? It's all going to be a bad thing. So here we go again. And then the last one I thought that I'm going to pull up here, it's right at the beginning, I thought was a little bit interesting because it said you can use this in an assignment and then you can use up to 200 words in that assignment to basically describe how you use this stuff, you know, how you applied it to your coursework and things like that. So I thought that was a little bit interesting to share, you know, kind of how you're using this thing. But anyway, I wanted to kind of pause for a second to see, because again, I wanted to make this a little bit interactive. So I don't know if you were able to get this thing up on your screen, but I have it up here. If anybody has any comments or thoughts on this, or if you've seen it or what you're thinking, like if you think this is positive, negative, neutral, love to hear. Does anybody have any thoughts on this one? Yeah, Sebastian, jump in.
Yeah. First of all, can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
cool. So I love Gen AI. I love all these tools. I use them daily. I think they give you a lot. They enhance who you are and they help you to develop, especially for coding. I think is a really good tool. My challenge with academia is the authenticity of how the person actually express themselves and how Gen AI can change it. And it's not that person, it's not that individual writing the paper anymore. That's the only thing that I do believe that changes how the actual individual expresses. Like if I write my paper and somebody reads it, they will know it comes from Sebastian. But if I use the tools to help me to correct the grammar and to kind of just organize it in a way that is actually going to pass the test, then it changes. And I do have a lot of concerns about how all these papers that people is writing, they're perfect, right? The critique level that they can get back from the professors is very low because is now that individual using all those tools to enhance themselves. And I'm not so worried about people cheating to find the answers to the question. I'm more concerned about not hearing the student that is actually telling me what he learned is about how he used another tool to tell me how he even expresses himself. I don't know if I'm clear enough, but that's the only thing I really think is it's not really that person anymore writing it. That's my only thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that have that, Sebastian. You're definitely not alone in that camp. You know, that's a big part of this whole misconception. And I feel like in academia as well. Todd, I know you love this one, so jump in.
Amanda, thanks. First of all, like, I love this. I'm very controversial when it comes to this stuff. I believe that artificial intelligence should be required in every classroom. And I think any teacher, any instructor, any professor above, I don't know, like, seventh, eighth, ninth grade, I don't know how young, but above a certain young age group, they should be required to teach using AI. They should be required that their students are using these technologies. Because if they don't, what they're doing is they are no longer doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's preparing kids and students and adults for the world that they live in. And it doesn't matter what we used to do. And anyone who walks in and says, well, this is how we've always done it, those people need to be fired. They're no longer qualified to teach in front of the classroom, full stop. And I've said that to many people, and I've been like, criticize me, I don't care. But I'm right. And it's uncomfortable for people to hear that. And I deal with this at the School of Visual Arts. There are numerous instructors, one of which, and I'm going to try and quote them, they said, they've actually found that it makes cheaters much easier to catch than before, since low-effort students tend to use low-effort queries, which are very discernible. Now, the problem with this is he can't tell. Unless he's got longitudinal data, longitudinal knowledge about the student's core knowledge, he's making assumptions on the fact that they are using AI, and he can't do that. And it's dangerous. So I think the policy should require it, and they should remove any teacher who doesn't require it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely on another end of that spectrum.
Yeah, no, I see a lot of that too. So the second one I'm going to pull up is kind of, I think it's a lot different. And it actually hits on what I'm doing right now. And I know a lot of individuals on the call too, especially if you're in business, you're researching, whether it's your competition, whatever it is, you're performing some kind of research. So I'm going to throw this one in the chat, and I'm going to jump to the next slide, because this one I think is a little bit more positive, but I think it's interesting because this one's focused more on the research realm of things. So let me see if I can move forward. Okay. So this one has the complete opposite view, I felt like. So it's going to enhance the creativity and your research capes. It's going to promote innovative solutions, deeper engagement. It's going to encourage thoughtful, integrations of these tools, responsible use, things like that. So this one is actually from Cornell, and I threw it out there. So let me pull this one up now. And apologies, I have like a million things up. Okay, so this one's focused more on the research aspect of things specifically, which was up my alley. I thought it was very interesting. That's why it kind of caught my eye. But anyway, this one, again, is looking to, well, I shouldn't say again, this one's looking to establish initial perspectives, cultural norms within the university, encouraging the use of Gen AI. But their stipulation here is maintaining research integrity. So it kind of highlights the need for continuous updates to align with like rapidly changing tech. So that's kind of what Todd was saying, is it's like, you don't want to get caught up in this like back in the Stone Ages mentality, right? You got to kind of roll with the technology. So I found that kind of interesting. But it just stressed here the importance of privacy, accuracy, ethics, the whole gamut, which we already know. And so basically it discussed within the policy how Gen AI should be, transparent, you got to verify it, you got to use it responsibly, but then it can start fostering your innovation, and then you'll be able to start mitigating the risks of it, right? And there was also a framework in here and different things like that. So I kind of wanted to pull up some of this to show a little bit of what I was speaking to of some of this within the policy. So the intro here, it's basically talking about, Gen AI offers transformative capes, but we have to strike a balance between exploring the potential of the tools and ensuring that your research always is, meets the standards of veracity, validity, originality, and reproducibility. That's like the biggest thing in research is you've completed, this little part. can we reproduce it again? Or is it something that ChatGPT thought up and we can never get to it again kind of thing? And it's like off the rails. So that's one thing they kind of hit on there. There was the framework in here, which I thought was interesting as well. So this is kind of, how you can use it in your research process. And so within there, I'm going to go down a little bit. They had different stages of the process they believe that this, Gen AI tools can be helpful with. And so one of them was research, conception, and the execution of it. So that's when you're going through your ideation stages. And that could be either by you or your research team. And, basically prior to any sort of public dissemination of your ideas and your results. Then it goes into the research dissemination stage. And so that's when you start publicly sharing this stuff, your research, your ideas, your results, some peer-reviewed journal publications, manuscript books, other creative works, sort of literally the works here. Research translation stage. So that's going to be, reducing research findings or results to practice. Could be in the form, maybe it's some patents involved here, copywriting, things like that. And then the research funding and funding agreement compliance stage. And so that could be, introducing proposals, seeking funding for research plans, things like that, compliance with expectations of sponsors. It mentions, the US government policies and things like that. So I thought, again, kind of having that framework in there was interesting. Now, what I'm going through right now in my research is I'm doing the literature review, which for some people, it's a nightmare. Some people love it, but that's really when you got to kind of see, what's existing out there kind of thing. And so I liked what it mentioned in here because it was basically saying, I'll move down a little bit. You can use it to sort of triage, organize, summarize things. I mean, I use this a ton in order to re-summarize the research I was pulling from things. So it's like, you have it in, sort of the original word, then you summarize it, then you put it in your own words kind of thing. So it's like that extra step to help you, and it helped me with outlining. So I love that because that's literally what I'm personally doing. And so one thing I wanted to mention though, is you always have to have, it's not doom and gloom, it's things you need to have in here, right? So let me kind of speed ahead to the bottom. And then I want to kind of get some thoughts on this. Okay. So this is when you're going to have, sort of your verification, disclosure, things like that. So they're sort of emphasizing the importance of clearly defining individual, collective, communal, whatever responsibilities for meeting the duties throughout your process and things like that. So, but that's, again, that's going to be a standard kind of thing here. But I thought this policy was a little bit different. Again, I know I'm putting everybody on the spot by saying, what are your thoughts when you haven't had a chance to fully read it? But I think I gave kind of a high level of that this one's more for the research side of academia. So I was curious if anybody has any thoughts, or if you're currently researching, what you think about the research aspect. Yes, Victor, jump in.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. It's great to see you, and thanks for putting this together. In this last segment, you mentioned that the author and used the word reproducibility. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that because I think generally I understand that the probabilistic nature of these GPTs won't reproduce the same answer given the same prompt each time. So I'm not raising that as a flaw necessarily, but more as a framework to say, at some point in research, there has to be a crossover from using the tools and then crossing over to fully accountable for your research, including reproducibility and the other aspects of whatever the nature of the research is. Is that a fair assessment?
So I think it's definitely an assessment, right? It's an interesting way to look at things. I think typically for this, what they're thinking of in research is that, okay, I came up with the methods, the, whatever the framework is, the way I pulled my sources, how I organize sort of this whole study, whether I, what sort of methods, like I already said methods, basically the way I laid out the study, sort of the plan that I had pulled together for my study. And basically, like, let's say somebody wants to use that for their research as a basis. I actually did that with one of the previous studies I had done. I looked at different surveys and the way they kind of tackled the problem. It was for that AI use for the screening process. I'm not sure if you saw that, for job seekers. And it was basically the usage of ATS within the process and what people thought about that. So I had found other studies where they did similar, they sort of built scenarios of, the first scenario was that the hiring leader is actually looking at the applications. Another one was, the tool was sort of sorting out, but the hiring leader makes like sort of the last decision. And then the other one was just using AI, ATS to screen it, and that's it kind of thing. So I think reproducibility here is literally that your study, somebody else has to be able to pick it back up and run with it. So I found it interesting they put that in there and your take on it, because to your point, reproducibility, if somebody puts that in there, we're going to get a different answer every time. So
Right.
I think it could be looked at in a multitude of ways. I think you can look at it sort of what I'm saying, or we can look at it in the way you were looking at it, is you're not going to get the same response.
Right.
So again, I'm not sure if they were going your route or my route, or personally, I think it's a combination of both.
Well, what I'm kind of formulating in my thinking is the appropriate use of the tool for the appropriate pieces that you're working on in the example of research. Knowing when you have to maybe put the tool aside after you've used it for its maximum benefit in your process, whether it's ideation, whether it's researching publications, wherever the effectiveness is, right? But then, your research is going to come to a conclusion and perhaps a breakthrough, perhaps a product, perhaps new science, whatever it might be. That whole arena, I think, has to sort of transition from the strength of the GPT in helping you as, let's say, a co-pilot, to actually digging in as a, let's say, scientist in this example for research. And now you're into the scientific method, you're into the regulations of research, and on and on and on, that possibly GPT may have a diminishing return in those areas, right? You can use it for what it's great for, but know when to transition to, I've got to really do the science here, right?
Exactly. So does it really know? I haven't sat there and asked it and said, do you know the research process and how would you go through this? So you're right. That's part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Todd,
Thank you
you've
for
been
your
hanging
thoughts.
out there. Thank you,
No,
Victor.
I'm listening to this. And again, I'm coming from a different perspective. But Amanda, like, have you used any of these tools for your research? No.
Nope, not at all. You can't, I don't see how you can, but that's
Oh,
fine.
okay. Well, again, like, I guess it depends on the research, because like right now, today, we can spin up a GPT researcher. I mean, these are code bases that you can download and use yourself. In fact, there's a number of platforms that are out there, Consensus and Semantic Scholar, and those are the ones that come off. Jenny, I think, is another one. You literally just ask it what you want in terms of literature review, and it's going to do the work for you, and it's going to give you the citations. But that's not the superpower. The superpower is the agentic AI. That's where we spin up a team of agents that are going to literally, help me craft some hypotheses to test. Let's start there. And then you ask it, okay, so we now have a list of hypotheses. What methodologies, research methodologies, do we need to use to test these hypotheses? Okay, then the next agent is going to figure out what data do we need. And they're going to work and collaborate, and then they're going to go gather the data. Well, wait, how are they going to gather the data? Well, suppose it's survey data. We'll have an agent that will craft the survey. Another agent will verify that survey to make sure that it's actually a correct survey, that it doesn't have any biases in it. And then another agent's going to take your credit card and it's going to establish that on Mechanical Turk, and it's going to run the survey on Mechanical Turk where humans are going to actually respond to it. Then it's going to take the data and it's going to analyze it, produce all the graphs, analyze the graphs, give you the results, and write the paper for you. Silence. So how does academia recover from that? It doesn't. I mean, like, it just changes everything.
Let me ask you this though, Todd, and then we'll keep I wanted to go through a couple other areas here, and then I'd love for us to keep digging into some of this stuff. But let me ask you this though, like, what sources are even in those, agents and stuff like that built out there? Because for me, it never even crossed my mind to look at anything like that. I think I'm up to, I was talking to page 260 resources right now, and I'm just on chapter 2. And it never crossed my mind to do anything even using, because I just don't trust it, which is why I wanted to do this talk, because I'm the one that doesn't trust it.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. But like, what are you asking the AI to do? To summarize a paper that you're using to research to your for your
Exactly. But
literature review.
how do you use it, Todd, to your point? Before we move on, I wanted to jump into art and a couple other areas, but how, like, what
I'm gonna start
sources
from
do they have out there within these tools, right? Or is it scraping the internet? Because does it have access to like the ProQuests of the world? You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, how is it even pulling this stuff?
It's a beautiful question. So it's not, you're not asking Chat GPT, or let me be real specific. You're not asking a large language model for information that's stored in its training data. This is an agent that has that has access to a large language model. That's what
Okay.
does a lot of its reasoning. But that agent, and it's a team of them. It's not just one, okay? It's a team of agents. And one of those agents would also have access to a number of tools, say a Google search or an API key to Semantic Scholar. And it would know, because you've programmed it, well, or someone's programmed it, that agent, how to search Semantic Scholar for papers that would be relevant to this literature review. Okay, let's just focus on the literature review, not the hypothesis testing and data gathering. So that we can do that right now, today, no problem. So the concept of a literature review is like, as exciting as it is for a PhD student, it's like, well, that's just a pain in the butt. And now you can have a superpower by not having to do your literature review anymore. Not really. You, as the human in the loop, you're still responsible for the stuff that it does, but it's going to make your life orders of magnitude easier today. So that's just your literature review. So now that you've done with your literature review, what's your next step in terms of your PhD? But that agent, and then by the way, so the other question you asked was like, how do you know if it's good or not? Well, that's you. Your brain has to read the material, read the citations, read the content, and still go through it. Read the abstract, read the conclusion. Is this a paper that's necessary? Oh yeah, this one's good. I'm going to incorporate it. But that same process of you reading it, guess what we can also do? We can make an agent that is going to act as Amanda Fetch, and it's going to read this stuff and compare it to our hypothesis. Does this paper that we're analyzing actually align with what we're researching? And it will point out plus minus. It'll give you how confident is it. And again, it'll lie, it'll hallucinate, it'll tell you what it is. But the agentic architecture solves that problem of how do we know and how do we trust it. It doesn't work today perfectly, but that's the roadmap that we're on.
So that's perfect what you said to segue into the next thing I'm going to get into, if I can find, because now I can't use tech at all. Here we are. Okay, so we have industry first. So I just want to kind of breeze over this one a little bit, because I think there's a misconception in industry that no one's actually putting any of this out into the real world yet. Like, pretty much everything is being tested internally. I mean, we're seeing constantly within companies that they're using this for some sort of HR, let's say they have their handbook within there. And so if you want to ask it a question, I mean, companies are being very safe and using this internally. But I mean, I've seen a ton of examples. I mean, I feel like that's all we're seeing now is it's being put out into production. So that's one misconception about it. So there was a couple examples I listed here just to talk about industry, and then I wanted to get into art next. But anyway, some of the use cases, some of you may have seen these, some of you may have not, but we're seeing things like Saudi Aramco. They have a well recommendation model. So they're basically building tailored LLMs to do these tasks with Gen AI, right? And so then Wayfair has the fortify, basically for customer home redesign. And there's a few other examples that I had pulled out in here, like Expedia, personalizing travel booking, things like that. So there are examples out here. Two of the startups that I was working with, Data Squared, HBAPers, by the way, if you haven't heard of them, we can discuss after, but I'm working with Data Squared right now, more of an advising capacity. But basically, we're focusing on oil and gas in the intelligence community, looking at well abandonment solutions and pattern analysis. In another startup I was working with, Narratize, they're basically using this for generating communications, white papers, pitches, things like that. So I think there was sort of this misconception that nobody's actually putting this stuff into production, that it's literally stuck in R&D and testing. But I think there are companies that are actually putting stuff out into production. So that's one thing I kind of just wanted to lay out there before we get into some more like what Todd was going for. I thought it was the next slide, but I'm not sure if anybody had any thoughts on industry. But then I wanted to jump into the cyborgs and kind of say what Todd's saying. Let's say everything Todd's saying is relevant. Are we Borgs? But does anybody want to jump in on anything in industry? And if you're, seeing similar that some people are saying, no, who actually has it in production, or, you know, just throwing it out there. If not, we'll move on to the art piece of it. Yeah, I kind of want to get into the cyborg thing too, because it cracked me up when I found the article. So there's this whole misconception in art, right? That basically you're using the human touch in art. We're replacing humans creatively, right? Art, writing, music, things like that. There was the whole Hollywood writer strike where it was sort of the AI against, you know, the, those screenwriting, things like that. And some saw what came out of that as a win for human creativity. Others kind of thought that AI kind of has its foot like wedged in the door. And then there's this whole, what Todd was saying, if everything's true, we're moving forward with that, there's this over reliance on AI. And so there was an article that was put out, I think it was around the time, maybe just after ChatGPT came out. This was in 2022. The timing I thought was interesting. So I want to bring this article up. And it was basically saying how there's this whole over reliance on Gen AI. We're basically turning into like mindless Borgs, basically, that can't think for ourselves. Like we're just going to churn out stuff from prompts without any human interaction at all. So I put that one out there. And so I'll pull it up here. How artificial intelligence can kill creativity and make us dumber. So not sure if anybody has anything to what kind of Todd was saying in that this use, yay, lasers, that this basically is going to make us dumber. Is it killing creativity? Like any thoughts on this in the cyborg world? Are we all going to become cyborgs? Yes, Todd. Especially after what you just said. So
of course we're going to become cyborgs. I want to be a bum. I don't want to do anything. I want AI to take care of all of the jobs, and so we can just drink beers on the beach. What are you talking about? No, it's not going to kill human creativity. What it's going to, and look, to Wes's point, to turn off the internet for it's not going to, it has the potential for making us dumber because people won't rely on their own brains to think. But in terms of personal creativity and personal expression, that's actually the future. It's where we enter a post-labor economy, and I'm looking a number of years down the road here, but then it's human creativity that's the only thing that matters at that point. It's the only thing that brings value to humanity. What is going to change is the value capture for that. There will be no value capture for human creativity. Why? Because the cost of cognition and creativity is dropping to zero. Sorry, the marginal cost of cognition and creativity is dropping to zero. Thank you, Kareem Lakhani. If it's dropping to zero, then there's no value capture. There's no job that does that anymore.
Love it. Sebastian, you're next on my screen. What do you think about this?
So I've been an automations engineer for over 23 years. And there's always a lot of fear when automations are going to be introduced and a lot of pushback. But I do believe with AI, there's fear. Like people is actually afraid of what this is going to bring. And in areas where people don't have the right level of education or the right level of skills, they're actually reaching out to unions to kind of just unionize to protect themselves because they're so afraid that they don't have the skills, so they're not going to be able to learn how to use it. And I do believe that the organization's lack of interest on how to educate these people on how to use these tools, because I think the biggest fear in America, and believe it or not, we have a lot of people that don't want to learn and that is not reaching out to be educated. It's a huge gap in education that we have in America. And the problem right now is because there's so much ignorance and the employers are actually not trying to break through that barrier. They're not educating the people to overcome that fear. And that's why a lot of these organizations are being challenged when now the employees trying to go and become a union and form all these syndicates, because there's a huge disconnect in what the organization wants to do. And I do believe that also they don't fully understand how they want to use these tools because they don't fully understand it yet. But I do believe that in general, they should spend more time training and educating the people on what this is actually going to do. And from my experience personally, they always see training as a we will do it later, or we will we will let the people learn on the job. And a lot of these tools, they're not very difficult, but you need to provide that training. You need to provide that space. And I do believe that a lot of these organizations and corporations that are trying to go digital and trying to rush this transformation, they're just not taking the time to do that. And that's what they're struggling.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on things about the training, upskilling, things like that. Wes, I think you dropped off, but I saw you had your hand up as well.
No, I was just gonna, second what Sebastian was alluding to. I mean, the problem is you have those of us who see it as a, like I say in the chat, kind of a multiplier, where we already have a certain knowledge base, we already have a certain, degree of educated, intelligence, so to speak, where you have those then that are more lazy. I mean, we've seen like in the social media aspect, with all the elections going on, for example, where now you have a public who doesn't understand, for example, how fundamental civics works, and they're being pushed to believe certain things or emotional about certain things, which aren't necessarily true because they don't know, they don't have the knowledge, they don't know the difference. And I think that that's then the danger where you over rely on a computer system, because I mean, ultimately you want the human to be able to check that system, right? I mean, of course, if and when we get to the point where the computer is smarter than the human, then the discussion will be potentially different. But I don't think we're there yet. But even then, that's then where we get it becomes a slippery slope. Like that's where the concern is, right? Where who's driving the train, so to speak. Like is it the AI or is it the human being? But I don't think we're there yet. But I mean, in terms of where we are now, you want to have it where it's a system that underpins already, like, it helps you gain more knowledge or helps you do research in a faster pace where you gain knowledge faster, right? Like you don't have to sit in a library and read 10 books anymore. You can say, I want specifically to know about this, right? And kind of band what specific knowledge you're out and what you're looking for. But we all experienced that when we went to school, right? I mean, where we had people where they didn't read the book, they plagiarized, they read the crib notes, that kind of thing. I mean, I was one of those people too. I used to read half of books and then I knew the characters well enough, and then I would write the paper. I mean, that was kind of how I did it. I still did the work, but you could kind of see how it was going, listen to the discussion in class, and and then the students that read the full book, were pissed off at you because you got a better grade. But that's like, but what I'm trying to say is you have that same grade problem, right? With grade inflation and all this already kind of an issue where in some regards, you could argue that students maybe aren't as knowledgeable when they come out because of that. And now you have a situation where potentially they get even lazier or less motivated to learn, because now it's like, hey, I can drink 3 beers now instead of 2 because I can stay out later and do even less work and still make the mark, right? So I mean and I can tell you this as a dean. I was a dean of a school of Defense Language Institute, so we get a lot of the young, impressionable ones, coming out, trying to see how they can skate through the course. I mean, we did Chinese and Korean, so it was really hard to skate through that. But and those that didn't work out so well, and they played the video games half the night. But I mean, that I think is the problem. The problem is are you using it as a tool, or are you actually using it as a substitute? And I think there's a real distinction there. I mean, like we saw with the law brief, right, where somebody basically had AI write the law brief and they didn't even necessarily review it, right? I mean, that's distinctly different. Replacement vice, something that magnifies or speeds your supports your knowledge, more of a support tool as opposed to hey, doing all the work. I think that's the real issue, and I think that's then where instructors and everybody else has the problem. It's like, you didn't do any of the work, and I can see it here. Or like when you discuss it in class, I can see you didn't do any of the research, because you don't contribute, that sort of thing. So there's other ways to check it, for example, with quizzes and all that, to see, hey, does the student really have the fundamental knowledge, where they can't now, crutch on the chat GPT, during the course of the exam, for example. I mean, I think that'll be then the shortcut to some of that sort of thing. But You know, I wouldn't want to have to try and do papers like if you do classic literature or some, you know, certain areas of education now, you know, like Romeo and Juliet, write a paper. I mean, come on, like what is that going to look like? You know what I mean? Like nobody's going to do that work anymore. I mean, it's so, I mean, you'd have to pick, I guess, more, you know, books that nobody ever read or something, you know, to try and push that sort of thing, you know, where you have to now do some type of original thought because there is no book like on, you know, whatever, you pick an author nobody ever heard of or read or something like that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on some of that stuff. But good points about what everybody's saying here.
Todd gave every emotion, so I think he liked what you were saying.
Oh, dude, Wes, I love your brain. That's just absolutely well said. Perfect.
I love it too, but okay, so the last 2 slides, the last 2 things I want to go through, all of this is fun and games until it comes to your life, okay? So now we're on to healthcare, right? So I put the link to the Pew study out there. And so I don't know if I pulled that up, but I wanted to go through that, and then I wanted to go to autonomous, pretty much in the military, autonomous weapons. So now we're on to the point where, okay, does it stifle creativity? Are you cheating too? Are you going to kill me in one way or another? So now it's like when we're talking about life or death scenarios, right? Does our thought process change on this at all? So one of the things I looked into was the misconceptions within the field. And so as you could see through the study, I put up some of the stats. And like I said, I think I put it in the chat. So let me see if I did pull it up. Okay, I did. So let me, first of all, I just want to read a couple things off here. So basically 60% of Americans said they'd be uncomfortable with their provider relying on AI for their own healthcare purposes. And 57% said they were worried about that sort of personal connection with the healthcare provider. And so I sent out the link to this so you could see a couple other statistics in there. So, you know, one of the headlines was fewer than half in the US expect AI and health and medicine to improve a patient outcome. So that's sort of I felt these were sort of interesting statistics if you want to after kind of delve into that again. But on the flip side of this, yes, you know, there's sort of this misconception that this is life or death, and is my healthcare provider going to kill me, and are they not going to pay attention to me anymore? So now, like I said, we've shifted to sort of life or death scenarios at this point with this stuff and with AI. So, you know, there's still some good, you know, to come out of this, right? So there's better personalized healthcare because now the healthcare provider can actually look through a patient's medical history, their preferences, behavior patterns. There's this sort of opportunity for patients to become better informed now with the use of these tools so they can actually be more active in their healthcare decisions. I know me, for example, when my doctor talks to me half the time, I'm like, I have no idea what the hell you're saying. You know, I'm going to have to Google this, and they'll try to be as layman as they can with me. And sometimes I still don't know what the hell they're saying. So I know I'm not alone. The only person who doesn't. So in my opinion, I think this could be a benefit. But again, these statistics are showing that there's a lot of people scared as hell of this stuff. And Sima, thank you for the healthcare person to come. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, no, I haven't read the paper in detail. I do have I do disagree with some of the things. Healthcare is extremely complex. Will it lead to better outcomes for patients? Absolutely. But will it be a privileged class of patients that actually have information through research and through our electronic health records that have access to healthcare? That's where I feel if it is not managed properly, it will definitely lead to a bigger gap in bias. So just as an example, I work with the gastrointestinal cancer team, and they have always seen colorectal cancers in a certain population that is between 50 and up. And now they're seeing that shift into people in their 40s. We don't know what the evidence is. We don't know what their psychosocial needs are at that age with that cancer. And AI is not going to help us there. So I think they're like some of the misconceptions where we will get more personalized healthcare. Yes, but for who, right? And how do we actively work on closing that gap? To bring equitable care to all. that is personalized. And I feel AI will get us there faster than anything, but it is extremely complex to just have it like, just have these statements say, oh, we'll have this and we'll have that. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
No, and that's an excellent opinion from somebody in the field. And that's exactly what Todd and the effects. I love it. But that's exactly it. So, and it's like, how do we help to better inform patients, right? And how do we, exactly what you said, how do we work to close that gap? And it's not going to happen overnight. So I think everything you're saying, Saima, it's very important to preface all of the discussions we have when we put, I guess, sort of the positives out there and the positive spin on things on who is this benefiting, right? So one thing, I'm going to get to the closing part of the slides here with the government and the autonomous weapons and things like that. But one of the other things I spoke to that I'm not going to cover here in this discussion today, though, was the use of this stuff in sort of law enforcement, right? And so that's when we start really getting into the bias, when you're sort of sentencing somebody and stuff like that. And again, in healthcare, it's like you could, you're causing this bias and disparities in healthcare. I mean, this whole gamut of terrible things happening, and this is costing people their lives. So this is when things start to get serious more than is somebody cheating on an exam or are they losing critical thinking. So this stuff like is happening now. So I'm gonna get to the last slide. And I also wanted to share as part of the last slide, a poll that I did put out on LinkedIn, because I want to close with, if anybody saw that, what their thoughts on that were. And I know someone on the call did take that poll when I put it out there. So the kind of closing of our discussion today has to do with autonomous weapons and the military and how this stuff sort of works. So there's something I put out there. There was an article by Defense One and GovExec. So if you're not familiar with them, they basically put out thought pieces from the national security, sort of the broader community out there. And so there was an article out there basically giving a disclaimer about how autonomous weapons are coming. And so they had a few different examples in there on how they've been using these things, how they were able to shoot targets with 100% accuracy, and all this stuff sort of talking autonomous weapons up, right? And how they're very accurate and things like that. But one thing they had to go in and do, though, and it actually talks about this in the article, was the Department of Defense had to go back in and kind of revise the policy on autonomous weapons, because the way it was worded, it basically looked like that the government and the way they were sort of phrasing it was that we're building these sort of killer robots that are going to kind of end the world, kind of like the Terminator, which was what my poll was about. And obviously that's not a good thing, especially to the public. So the Pentagon basically went in and they updated the policy. And so I also shared the policy up there. And basically what it was saying was that it requires a senior reviewer before pretty much these systems go into play, or we start shooting targets and things like that. There's still a human in the loop is basically the gist of it. And it also went on to say, the US is working with other governments in Europe and things like that, to kind of state that this is a global thing and that we're not out there by ourselves, right? With this whole Terminator effect and things like that. So before actually this came out, I did a poll on LinkedIn because I saw, and I'm not going to say who the speaker was, but I saw somebody speaking on this topic, and they basically were somebody who's been in this industry for I think 40 years now. And they basically said they believe it's the Terminator. And they said in the next so many years. So they were in the 1 to 10 camp, that basically this stuff's going to end us all within 10 years. And they're a highly respected person in the community. Now, I did the poll, and I have a little bit of a following on LinkedIn. We got about 60 people to respond, and they were all people in the community. And so they weren't somebody who literally has never seen this stuff before in their lives. So I respect highly these people's opinions. I can literally see who took the poll. And so the way it turned out when I took it was 18% thought that we'd have the Terminator in the next 1 to 10 years. 21% said in the next 11 to 20. So within 20 years, 39% of the people thought the Terminator is going to happen. I'll tell you right now, I was in camp, it's never going to happen. And I believe, just to throw a name drop out there, I think Johan McCabe also said he doesn't think it's going to happen. So some of us don't think it's going to happen. Some of us think it is going to happen. And I'm not going to say who on the call was for either camp, but I wanted to end on that note and see if anybody wants to come in there and say, what do you think about this? And if you had taken it, where did you stand, or what do you think? Is this going to be the death of us, and is it coming soon? So throwing that out there, anybody, any thoughts on this as our sort of closing of the evening?
Come on, folks, confess. I want to know who said what.
Well, Todd, then I'll give you the results out.
Oh yeah, give me the
But I
results.
didn't want to
I wanna-
blast anybody on the
Just don't make me sign.
Sebastian.
Just don't make me sign a non-disclosure agreement because I'm gonna tell everyone.
on
I'm
on
gonna-
how you did the poll, Sebastian. Did you want to share what do you think about this? Are they is this stuff going to end us in one of these time frames?
So I don't think it's gonna be AI though. And I spent half of my life in the military, right? So we have developed a lot of autonomous systems that are focused on defense, right? To protect all these countries. And a lot of those, they have a lot of nuclear power, right? So if somebody recklessly attack America and we had to react against nuclear power and then a few of them impact the earth, we're gonna be destroyed. But a lot of this has been created since the 80s, right? So a lot of people is believing that this is going to happen now, but this has been happening. We have been under the same threat for decades, because and that's what a lot of people try to say. This is all AI. No, this is a lot of autonomous stuff that we have been creating and developed to protect their countries and the borders of all these countries that have enough power and money to actually build these missiles. So it's not going to be AI. It's going to be a reckless decision, probably by a human, against a country that had these capabilities, and then the impact of the nuclear warheads is just too powerful. So I'm not afraid, because then we have been under the same threat for so many years, and I think there's a huge misconception believing that the technology that we created today is what is going to kill us, because the technology that is going to destroy this planet has been created decades ago. So I just wanted to say that.
I love it. And not just because we think the same, but maybe that's part of it. Wes, what's your thoughts?
No, I just want to follow up with what Sebastian was saying. I mean, I've been in the military too for years, and I mean, most of this stuff. I mean, like you think of our classic nuclear weapons. I mean, there's a huge to launch a nuclear weapon. I mean, there's a huge checklist. Anything that's going to go offensive and do significant damage or do potentially kill people, of any kind of lethality. There's a lot of controls. I mean, even when you carry firearms, for example, I mean, checking a weapon in and out. I mean, we have anything with a lethal capacity usually has an enormous amount of checks associated with it. It's not something that's just like, anybody can usually get a hold of those things or actuate something like that. And it's not the case. Like I said, that's most of those systems that are more autonomous, or those defensive systems, like makes me think of like CWIS, what they talk about, like with the close in stuff, like for example, the Houthis are trying to fire on some of the ships out in the Gulf, for example, a weapon system now comes in, it's within a certain distance from a ship. Now that weapon system is programmed to defend that ship. And it's not firing on individuals or people, it's firing on a tactical system that's trying to prosecute that particular ship, for example. I mean, those are the sorts of things that are becoming autonomous because of the speed of the weapons. You don't have a human reaction capability now to be able to contend with that. So that's then why you use that, an algorithm, a computational sort of thing that, with time distance kind of calculations programmed in to stave that threat off. So that's normally how most of those sorts of systems are done, and like what Sebastian said, I mean, this is not research that's done in a couple of hours. I mean, these are systems that took decades in many cases to come to where they're fielded, and so a lot of it's just of course the fear aspect, right? I mean, we saw that even with some of the thought leaders within the technology community talking about the potential fears of AI and what AI might represent or what it might do. And that's with every science, right? I mean, you pick a science, you can think of some, catastrophic, cataclysmic sort of thing, where, the guy tips over the wrong petri dish and, all of humankind now is, we got the Walking Dead or whatever, so that's always going to be there. And that's that lack of understanding. And, what I mentioned earlier, the trust factor, I think that's one of the things that we really haven't cracked the code on. And that's where, you see all this conspiracy theory stuff going on, because people don't understand a lot of what's happening, and that's then behooves us then to speak more about what is going on, or what does it mean.
Exactly. Fear mongering at its finest, right? And misinformed without getting all the facts. James, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. basically mine is more of a comment and an observation. So happy to hear that the U.S. government has kind of like approached its, the European allies about kind of creating a convention on use of autonomous weapons. And that kind of, I'm happy to hear about that because it kind of brings to mind what I once had. There was this interview of Oliver Stone where he went to Russia and interviewed Putin. And at that time, I think Putin made a point which I thought was really eye-opening in that the US government initially is the one that started like cyber offensive weapons, like, right? And the Russians, once they realized that, they approached the US government and told them, hey, listen, we think we should kind of come to kind of an arrangement or an agreement similar to one of those stocks sold treaties that they had out there on nuclear weapons. And the US government at that time had such a competitive advantage, they refused. And Putin said, okay, fine, that's great. We have some of the smartest mathematicians out there. We can do the same thing. And as a result of that, we kind of missed that boat in terms of creating some kind of guardrails on how cyber weapons could be used. Now it's basically any other country out there that's got a smart, well-informed, computer literate citizenry. They can go out there, create their own weapons, and they can attack anywhere, can attack any country regardless of capability. So it kind of made it a little bit of the Wild West. So, yeah, just an observation there.
Yeah, thank you, James, for sharing that. Todd, did you have any sort of final thoughts? And I'm gonna end with I had to make a Gen AI slide of me on a thing flying away for my PhD. So Todd, you wanna close us out here, my friend?
You're making me close this out? This is
Well, you had a final thought. I thought you raised your hand.
Oh no, that I was something to Wes's comment about patient zero, and I'm like, yeah, that knocking over the petri dish, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. That's my life goal. I am that guy. Like I want to be patient 2, in the zombie apocalypse, because like I want to be able to see like, oh, hey, oh shoot, now it's coming, and then just let them attack me, and then it'll be over. Like, but I want to know that it's happening. I want to know. I don't want to be patient 1. I want to be or patient 0. I want to be like patient 2. It's like, oh, and then I'm trying to tell a joke, and it's just bombing horribly.
I'll laugh at you, Todd. I'll always laugh at you.
Laugh with me, yeah. So I know
I'll always laugh at you.
I gotta make my thing tomorrow funny and engaging and controversial. So Amanda, this is really, really fantastic. I mean, the misconceptions with AI, I see it constantly. And it infuriates me, quite frankly. I see people continue to say, oh, well, ChatGPT and large language models, they can't tell you they're not creating anything new. Diffusion models don't create anything new. They're only based off of what, the data that was fed into them. And this is demonstrably and patently false. And, the image that you have on the screen right now, that was generated by whatever AI tool you used. And that arrangement of pixels has never existed in that configuration in the history of the universe. So you can't say that it doesn't create something new. The same thing with ChatGPT, with any large language model. You ask it to output something, you prompt it, you architect your prompt properly, it's going to give you something new. Is it useful? That's the question. And it's the agents that are here. It's not that they're coming, they're here. That's what puts the critical thinking component into every single step. And we're going to see this in the next, few months. I mean, like we have it now, like you can go play with these tools. They don't work perfectly unless you've got a lot of money to spend on token inference costs. But what I can do with my laptop and, Llama 3, it's incredible. Llama 2, yeah, sorry.
Hey, can I ask you though, Todd, are you seeing critical thinking in this? I mean, or is it just like, somebody wrote a critical piece and it's cutting and pasting something and
there's no cutting and pasting. That's a great question though. Am I seeing critical thinking?
That's the going to be the leap, right? Where it begins to think on its own in terms of it has, looked at enough questions or cases and now can
so here's a use case. Okay. And by the way, this is I should stop recording because I don't I mean, I don't mind telling people, one of the things that I've been working on was an AI-based advertising agency. Okay. Turns out I've now met dozens of people who are working on exactly the same idea. The thing that doesn't work perfectly is the critical thinking component. How do you know if this advertisement that the AI generated with whatever text, with whatever background, with whatever image is aligned with the strategy of the business that it's creating the advertisement for? So there's what's working today, what's working right now is, well, let's just establish the boundary conditions and we ask this system to create the content and upload it to Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever. Were you sharing something, Amanda? Sorry. But the critical thinking component, so imagine a universe where we could craft an agent whose job is to review the information you've given it. So I'll give you the advertising agency example. Here's an advertisement that was created. The AI agent doesn't care about where it came from, but I'm going to give it to this agent. The agent's job is to look at this image. Let's just simplify it, a still image, print image, for example, and think about it. Tell me what you see, step one. Tell me, does this align with the strategy that I've also provided? And it's a collaboration, but that system is what we're trying to build. And that's, again, and think about this for just a second. Imagine you had an agentic system of lots of agents that could do the critical thinking. Now, it's not perfect, but and from what I'm seeing, the problem is not just the large language model, meaning if we had GPT-5 or GPT-6 that had better reasoning skills, holy moly. I mean, again, I don't have the money to use GPT-4. Like I can't afford to run an experiment or a test on the critical thinking agent on those models. They're just too expensive. Like I could easily spend $1,000. I ran one experiment back, months ago. I went through almost $400 and didn't realize it. So shit. And I got nothing from it. It got stuck in a loop. I mean, I was like, oh, great. The good news is these toolkits are now recognizing, well, we have to put limits on this so that we don't destroy people's credit cards. But now you can run this on your own laptop using an open source, open weight model, and it's completely private. You don't have to pay a damn penny for the token. You just need a decent laptop or a decent computer that has a really good graphics card in it. But the critical thinking stuff is what we're working on. And then it becomes a generic. It becomes, if OpenAI, which they're now training GPT-5, if that has the reasoning skills, if it has the critical thinking skills that we're all talking about, then my agentic thing that I'm working on goes away instantaneously. When GPT-4o was released, it's multimodal, all of these startups, we're going to create this one thing and it's going to gone overnight. That's what happened to, it's one of the things that happened to Distill It, my startup. We were designing a tool to help people read and understand things very quickly. GPT 3.5 was released and and Vanessa and I are like, well, okay, what are we going to do here? Well, we can't. And it was just, we had other issues as well, but that was a learning experience. And I think, from an entrepreneurial perspective, from a startup perspective, we need to think above and beyond. We need to, Kareem Lakhani said transformation effects, and this is what I'm teaching my students. Think outside the box. Think about the universe, not today, but in a number of years, really, I should say, in a number of months, in a number of weeks, because it's exponential. Like that, how do you stay ahead of a future that you can't even think of? And most of I'm not a Python expert, but you don't need to be now. I can use, a GitHub Copilot. I can use Google Colab and it'll auto-complete this. It's like, what? It's so much easier to just get started that you don't have to do what we used to have to do. Right. So all of us using these tools have superpowers. We need to practice using the tools so that we can implement the superpowers. But wave a magic wand, poof, you're an expert now. The cost of cognition, the marginal cost of cognition is zero. You have the domain expertise that you are seeking. Okay, not exactly. I mean, it's like there are certain unforgivable industries. If, healthcare, legal, engineering, when lives are at stake, those are non-forgivable industries. But if you're in advertising, like one of my students last week, I showed her, she was playing with the text to image models, and she's like, yeah, it's wonderful. And she's talking about all this stuff. And yeah, like she used to have to hire a freelancer who was an expert, sorry, a freelancer who's an expert in Photoshop and Illustrator. And now she can do all that stuff on her own. And she's just so excited about this. And then, but what I said to her was, okay, this is great. What about the 10,000 plus hour expert in Photoshop and Illustrator that you just fired, that no longer has a job? And then the room gets silent. And it's like they feel it, but now they understand it because one of their students in the room is now expressing, oh yeah, we don't need those people anymore. Those jobs are no longer valuable now. Okay, but we need control. We need to, if we have that, we need to get this exact thing. We have this vision. We're making one or a handful. It's still there. But now with AI, the transformation effects business model is we can create this content that's good enough in a forgivable industry at scale. What's that business model? What's that universe look like? That's the future. And so I said to my student, well, so what about your boss? Okay, if your boss starts using AI, generative AI, large language model, diffusion model, what of your tasks in her job that she gets paid for could they do? She got silent real fast. And her response is like, I hope that they don't learn how to use this, because then she's recognizing what she does and what she gets paid for in terms of that value chain from her from the job that she works at an advertising agency. If her boss starts using it, then she might be out of a job too. And we're experiencing this, we're seeing this on a daily basis. And as people, as businesses, as industries absorb these technologies, that's the replacement effects. I spoke too much.
No, I think about the socioeconomic piece, because you're going to have an economic piece of this that's going to potentially be interesting to see how that gets navigated by what you're talking about. When those people are eliminated, or those jobs are eliminated, and how do you then upskill that segment of society? Because I don't see anything like that really happening. I mean, those of us to do it are doing it, but
Wes, tell me what I've asked this question to almost all of our professors and some of the smartest people that I have access to. Tell me what skills we're supposed to upskill and reskill to. And it's dead silence, because when you start to think ahead, as the cost of cognition and creativity drops to zero, then I don't need a person with the knowledge and the skill, because I could get the AI to do that. Maybe not today, maybe it's not perfect, but like a common one is like, well, the human in the loop. The human who's going to watch the stuff and verify the thing that is this good and double check the AI. That's fine.
Well, I'd argue, I mean, to your point, I would say that the classic divisions of labor now change markedly, and that's what you have to figure out. Like, who's responsible for what?
Explain.
Well, I mean, in terms of, you always have certain tasks that are required, right? I mean, you need like sanitation, you need, like you say, lawyers, what I'm saying is you have a division of labor now, right? And now your AI can do pieces of that labor that now human beings are not necessarily going to be employed to, because of
That's brilliant. Yeah. Again,
that's the difficult part to foresee, because so much is changing so rapidly. But I think that's the beginning point of that, or trying to figure that out.
It's almost as if we've never done this before.
Oh no, it's done it.
If we've never decided to manufacturing, that we didn't go through the internet.
Yeah.
And at the time, people asked the same questions and nobody could answer the questions. And here we are with a 3% unemployment. We figure this out. I think it's a basic truth of the economy, that we have to fill those gaps with people who are making money so that they could buy goods, so that people could continue to survive. And those gaps will be filled. But we didn't have Zoom rooms back in the day, and we didn't have, mass media back in the day to scare the shit out of us.
Yeah.
The reality is that this is, some people should be afraid. I said, put in the thing, we used to have steno pools. You know, we used to, the very people that you talk to are afraid they're going to lose their job in graphic arts are the very people who put people out of business who were doing teletype machines. You know, and we evolve.
Yeah, I think of whaling oil and like the fears around like electricity initially, like, you know, all of that. Yeah. I mean, any of these evolutions have had all this kind of doom and gloom potential.
And
the only difference I would suggest, though, is that this is going to be a much more rapid, you know, transformation than we had back in the day. But we're also prepared with technology. We're also prepared with, as humans, to iterate more rapidly as well. I you know, I think we need to be aware and we need to be on our toes, but being fearful is just dangerous. You know, it's just dangerous. And
well,
people,
how do you explain to someone, Kelly, not to be afraid? Like,
you tell them, shut the fuck up, don't be afraid.
okay.
That's why, you know, I mean, I don't know how you not tell them not to be afraid. You know, if they're afraid, it's because they have misinformation. You educate people. You know, you give them the option. It's not like Godzilla's coming into the planet, you know, and starting to cars.
Well, okay, now I'm going to push back on that, though. Is this not an existential, like, imagine this is an alien that's just landed on planet Earth that can do the things that humans do.
No,
that's
it's not
scary. That's scary to many people.
Well, I think, you know, when we use words like existential crisis,
well,
I think we're sort of misinforming the public about the values of technology and the technology and the fact that we've iterated and we are living the most disruptive, you know, not just with AI, but since I was in college. You know, it's every freaking month there's another disruptive technology that comes out, whether it was the internet, whether it's you know, it's crypto, it's blockchain, it's this. We tend to figure it out. And here we are today with 3% unemployment. Now, are the wealthy getting wealthier and the poor getting poor? Yeah. You know, there are some socioeconomic issues around this that we have got to take care of. But it's not this isn't the end of the world. You know, and I think that's the fear that a lot of people have. I look at that is Garrett here. Yeah, Garrett's still in the room. You know, V2, you know, I'm constantly thinking about where in V2 are we going to use AI where it actually eliminates people? I don't see it. I don't see it. You know, and we use AI, we use machine learning. We're trying to, you know, bring all these new technologies into our company every single solitary day. We're not losing people. We're actually creating more value for our customers so that we can hire more people. We're not losing headcount, we're increasing headcount. I think the fear is, you know, the scary part about what was Churchill? We have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Fear itself. Yeah.
Part about this, people are making us afraid. And if we're afraid, we're back on our heels. And if we're back on our heels, we're going to be caught in this. Lean forward and figure it out. We always have. We're not idiots. So anyway, end of speech. I'm getting too old for these. So somebody 66 going on 67 years old is afraid of AI. Damn it, nobody should be afraid of AI.
I don't know how to follow up what Kelly said, but I'll try. So just to give an example, we have a team of 40 developers. These are all mostly Gen Z. They're all coders. They're all math graduates, and they chose a non-for-profit hospital sector to work in. So then, you know, they're not like, you know, into the Amazon and the Googles. What we're doing is there is no fear that their job will be taken away. But there is actually a transition in the way we work. And what we are trying to train everybody is about the human side of things, right? Like, let's talk about how to be more strategic. Let's talk about how to actually do change management when you go into a clinical setting and try to integrate technology and AI. How do you build trust with your team members as a consultant? So there's a shift in the way we are just going to define ourselves. Instead, we're like, you know, we will have Gen BI tools, which you literally feed a data source in, give it the key questions you want visualizations on, and it'll develop it. So we are expecting that, and we're training our teams to be better in the people side of things. Even though they're all introverts, they all like coding on SQL and Python and not talking to stakeholders, but we are setting up courses and examples where they get to build on that skill set and not be lost in their career, because, you know, these are amazing graduates from Duke and Harvard and Boston University. So I feel like the fear part is at least not in my industry. We are embracing this and we're moving forward as best with our team of 42 right now and continuously hiring. So
I think that's I love to hear that, Simon. And I just see it's the fear and it's the trust. Those two words resonate, and I struggle with that. It's like, okay, here's what's happening. How does it make you feel? It's uncomfortable, and that stokes the fear. It's like, oh, see, this is coming for your job, and then flipping that around and saying, okay, well, let's look at the transformation effects. Let's think about the future and look at this from an opportunity perspective. Then all of a sudden the faces light up. That's what happened in class last night for me. Like the students were like, oh yeah, now I see, this is the future. Yes, the tasks of the past are going to be automated, but look at what we can now build. I now have a superpower. This is I'm trying to teach my students, you have a superpower. Here's the magic wand. I'm going to teach you how to use it. Now go. And that's the opportunity. Now it sucks if somebody else was, again, Kareem Lakhani, humans without AI. You're in trouble. That's it. And I think that's what we need to teach. That's the upskill. But then, of course, trusting it. Brilliant, Simon. And I'm glad to hear that you've got folks who are developers and they're leaning into it.
yeah, our new VP is from Moderna.
Oh,
Yeah, and very, very nice guy. And he is like, sorry?
Score. That's a score.
Yeah, and he is just like, he just wants to embrace technology, but not forget the people side of things. Because at the end of the day, we're in the business of people and relationships and care. So, yeah, he's a great leader so far.
Victor's hands up.
Yes, it's a really interesting discussion. I wanted to throw another perspective in about humans without AI. Because if I fast forward my thinking to the day when speech perhaps to agent to AI to result, right, whatever the output is, becomes completely accessible to people with a wide range of skills, whether you're the advanced creative or whether you're just a simple person who thinks as they do and expresses as they do, but it becomes an equal agent to the power of AI, right? So the idea of people without AI could perhaps go away, except for the access and economic divide and those issues that would have to be resolved. But average people could just express a thought and have access to AI. Then what? The first thing that comes to my mind with the then what question is, there is no fear because I'm now in it, and I don't have to be, I don't have to know how to prompt or how to manipulate or how to access this tool. I just have to talk to it like I talk to Alexa and I get the music I want, right? But now I can perform my job. I can be effective at my, let's say, and I'm hesitating to use the word level because it's not about level. It's about skill, my skills, right? My skills are different than the advanced creative, than the engineer, than the prolific musician, than the whatever. But those people, everybody can express within their skills to an AI in the future and have access to the power of it. They can get used to the interaction of it, and they can, let's just say, be productive with AI for its strengths at whatever task or whatever need is presented to AI. So from that point of view, I was thinking, and this is a long way around this, right? But the idea that the fear cycle will escalate until that day when everybody can just express themselves for whatever reason and AI responds to them, then the fear goes away and you're now a human with AI, right? So does the concept of fear cycle make sense in that context, that the fear cycle would just diminish for more and more people?
That's a good question. I got thoughts about that, but Paige has got her hand up. I'm going to put something in the Zoom chat, Victor.
I was just going to say, I just read probably one of the most interesting books I've ever read called AI 2041. Have you guys heard of it? Oh my God, it's so good. And it's 10 stories. I'm a content creator for higher ed, so it just blew my mind how they presented it. So it's 10 stories about 2041 and AI. And then after it tells the story, the storyteller is a developer who became a science fiction writer. And then Kai-Fu Lee is the author who wrote AI Superpower. And then after the story, it goes into which model they're using and how. So it was just absolutely fascinating to read. So like the first story, there was someone family in Mumbai, India, who gets this golden dragon insurance company who then get access to all their data. And then the one kid's overweight. So if they buy sugar, their insurance premiums go up. So they have to start like feeding their kid better. And then the one daughter falls in love with someone in her Zoom class, kind of reality class. But their insurance goes up because he's actually of a poor caste, even though they don't have a caste system, they know. And so she can't go near his neighborhood. So the parents are getting all these insights into their kids' lives and behaviors. It was really, really fascinating the way they wrote it. And then I loved, like as a teacher, as a professor, my students, you know, the thing I love about AI is, thank God we're going to disrupt higher ed. No more freaking multiple choice, true, false memorization. That should have been gone years ago. And to teach this way, like make the kids think, how can you use this and the pros and cons and dig into this during a lecture is so much more exciting than just, I loved this book. So if you get a chance, it's absolutely fantastic. And I just really loved the creative way for those of us in the education industry, how they were presenting these little caselets and then really digging into which model, but all the pros and cons are in there. Like you could write an instructor's manual to this and use it in your classroom, no doubt. It's absolutely awesome. So just wanted to put that out there.
Paige, you've written about a lot of books, textbooks, right?
A lot of books.
Are you using any of the large language models to help you with your next book? Or are you looking at your previous books and how do you know, are they still valid?
This is the bane of my freaking existence.
Glad I could bring it up. You're welcome, Paige.
And why McGraw-Hill offered me a ridiculous advance to write an analytics book. And I'm just going to go self-pub because the problem with McGraw-Hill is they have this tool called Connect, which is kind of great. So the students kind of buy the book. Now it's an ebook, which is great for the environment. And we get recurring revenue. The instructors get feedback on the students. So it's a nice platform. They did the platform really well. But I, as the author, cannot change anything without massive. So now we just do green editions. So if I go in and rewrite like a whole chapter, I got chapters I want to just tear apart. When they push it out to the instructors and students, the instructors get angry because content shifts and they have their whole course mapped out. So I am literally I can only change like 5 or 10% every edition because I have to go in and help all these. And I don't know. It's driving me insane that I can't give the book I want in the classroom. I'm strung by this tool.
Paige, I'm confused why they won't let you make more than just a few changes. I don't understand.
Because it has to go out to all the instructors and the 50,000 students that are using it. And because the instructor has already mapped it out in Canvas and everything, if it switches, all their test questions, everything switches and they don't want us to change. The instructors are lazy. I'm sorry to say that.
I'm using Canvas. Yeah, I'm lazy. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
They get angry if they don't want the changes. It's too much work for them.
Don't make changes. Yeah, no, I get that. Yep. Sorry.
For the crowd's knowledge page, how many textbooks have you written?
I have 3 on the market, but I've been writing my first one. I'm in the 10th edition, so it comes out every so for 20 years. So it looks like there's 25, but it's just rewritten of the 3 books. So yeah, I've been writing for a long time, but they've gotten so dependent on the tool. I can't, it's just, it's it's hard. It's frustrating.
Need to convince you to co-write a book with me where I don't have to write a word and I just get the byline. Can we do that?
There you go. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to move. The good news is I can self-publish now.
Yeah.
I don't need a copy editor. I got Grammarly, right? I don't need all this stuff that they used to provide for me. I can do my own figures. And I'm not allowed to use anything. I'm not allowed to use any figures that are AI generated.
Oh,
no photos.
They don't allow it.
With distribution if you self-publish in the academic world?
What?
Is there problems with distribution in the academic world if you're self-published?
I don't think so for me, because I have my market. I'm a franchise. I'm at every school, and where my books in information systems, that's who's teaching the analytics. So I have my market. My editor is awesome. She's like, we can't do what I want to do for the business analytics book. She's like, go write it. I'll give you your customers, and I can do it all myself with the marketing. Where it's going to get tricky is a lot of schools, just the finance part. Like if you're on scholarship and stuff, you have special things. So it's just a lot of stuff like that. But to be honest, I think I can do it better, quicker, faster. With McGraw-Hill doesn't offer me what I need anymore. And I think with AI, the teachers can't just keep using the same book with the same multiple choice questions. Like they're going to have to start looking for alternatives, because McGraw-Hill's not going to do that.
Fascinating.
On that note, what I should do is end the recording. And if Paige, you want me to edit that part out, I can do that before we post it. So I just want to thank Amanda. Misconceptions. That actually came out wrong. Misconceptions of AI, but it's not your never mind. I'm going to stop. I'm going to edit that. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you had a great time. Amanda Fetch, thank you for this. This is a pleasure. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And I will see you all next week, and I'm going to end the recording.
Hey, thanks, Tom.